All right, we've done a whole lot of these events now. We've made process diagrams for a whole lot of these events, and there's a couple remaining. We have it's time to suspend an organ type from a supplier. You'll recall that in the scope originally, it said that if a supplier sends us a heart, for example, and it's diseased, there's one strike against the supplier. If they send us a second heart, there's 2 strikes. And if they send us a third heart that's diseased, there's 3 strikes against the supplier. We don't kick out the supplier and say, we don't want any of your stuff anymore. We just say to the supplier, don't send us any more hearts. We'll accept your livers and your spleens, but not your hearts because they weren't any good. So I'm going to let you work on this one. We've seen a lot now. You know how to do it. Do the process diagram, do the business rules table. And then, after you've done that one, time to suspend an organ type from a supplier, go on to it's time to dispose of an organ because it's too old or diseased. These shouldn't be very difficult to do, but you can do that yourself as well. But I'm going to talk to you about one issue here. One of the things that I said earlier in the course was that this is a single iteration process. You go through doing a process just once. You don't come back to it and back to it and back to it and do some kind of an archaeological dig. But I also said, except when you do. So here's a situation where you're going to suspend an organ type from a supplier, and you're probably going to come up with an object called suspended organ. Sort of makes sense, right? And a suspended organ will keep track of the type of organ. I'm going to put organ type here, and I'm going to put disease count here. So if you get a heart, an organ type called a heart, and you get one from a supplier that's diseased, you're going to increment that by 1. When you get the second one, you're going to increment it by 2, up to 2, and then finally up to 3. And all those organs that have 3 strikes against them become suspended. Any others that you're counting here are not yet suspended. But let's see what that affects. If you go over here for a moment, go back to an organ arrives from a supplier. One of the things we have to do is that if a supplier has an organ type suspended, we don't want to accept those organs that have been suspended from the supplier. So if it's a heart that's suspended, we don't want to accept those, but we'll accept their livers and spleens. You see here, when we get the organ from the supplier, we see if they're accredited, of course. If not, we reject it, and we keep track of the organ. But if the organ has been suspended, and I'm going to add suspended organ here as an object. And we can do a query and a response against that in terms of is it suspended. And if it's suspended, a heart, for example, that's got 3 strikes against it from that supplier, we reject it and send it back. And if it's not suspended, then we'll accept it into inventory. Sounds pretty straightforward. But of course, we have to add suspended organ to our business rules table as well. And we have to ask questions about the cells that are still open. You know how that works. You can do that. So now we have, as you can see by looking at this wall, we've done quite a few we've done most of the events that apply to the TORDIS project. This is it. Now you can start. Now remember that the best way to start is to work with somebody who's experienced in doing this. Have a coach, have a mentor in the beginning, and you'll find that you'll get good at it really, really fast. Having said that, have a great, great professional practice.